year is 1906. The colonial settlers have just discovered this gem high up in the hills of Ukambani, a place called Moor Hills with a climate similar to the popular White Highlands, only virgin and undiscovered by fellow colonies. In true colonial fashion, they decide that the people who truly own this land and have lived here for generations don't belong here anymore. Using the gun, of course, they uproot them from their ancestral land and take them to a native reserve settlement far away down the valley and stand over them as they build mud and cow dung huts that they are to refer to from now on as home. One of these young natives was a young man called Muoka, who doesn't realize it at the time, but this move was but destiny. It will shape his future. Muoka wa Mutangwa settles to his new surroundings, finding employment and rising to the position of headman, or locally known as Nyapara, at the nearby colonial farm, owned by a Mr. F.B. Johansen. And thanks to missionaries and his boss, he is introduced to Christianity and baptized Joshua. He completely embraces Christianity, and by the First World War in 1914, when he is drafted as a member of the Carrier Corps, who are the reason behind the name of the modern-day Carrier Corps in Nairobi. Joshua, together with Mbotela and Johansen, who is locally known as Ellison by the Mkambas attempting to pronounce his name, have already started building a church. After they come back from the war in 1918, they continue the work on the church, which is completed and has its first congregation in 1920 as the East Africa Church. Joshua, who seems to have discovered his passion, undergoes theological training, which soon earns him the title Reverend. This church stands to date and was recently taken up by the Anglican Church of Kenya. They named the church after Reverend Joshua Muoka in his honor. Now, back to the 1920s. After Joshua's first wife, Oyua, with whom they had 4 children, Katiku, Ndunda, Laban, and Delay, passes away. Joshua marries his second wife, Naomi Nzola, a widow who has a daughter called Nzisa. In 1928, whilst in the midst of one of the harshest famines this area has ever experienced, to an extent that it was given the name Yuayangetele, which by the time we were going into production of this film, no one could translate. But they all remember it was called Yuayangetele. That's how serious it was. It's during this same period, on the 3rd day of July in 1928, in the village of Kwanza, yes, Kwanza, Mwangal sublocation, in Mitaboni location, that Joshua and Zola are blessed with a baby boy, who they name Kombo Judah Muoka. The name Kombo is after the first district commissioner of Machakos district, Walter Francis Campbell. Yes, the local pronunciation of the name Campbell at the time was Kombo. Kombo is baptized at Kwasimu River, which is close by at the valley as you head to Metaboni from here, at the age of 14, and he names himself Francis after the educationist and missionary Edward Carey Francis, principal of Alliance High School in Kikuyu, who by now has become quite a popular figure around the country. He refers to himself from now on as Francis Judah Muoka. The name Kombo would disappear for 47 years before resurfacing as the name of his 7th grandchild. After completing his secondary school studies at Government African School Machakos, popularly known as Kwamatinge, in 1944, just like many other ambitious young men at the time, he leaves for Nairobi in search of employment. While staying with friends, he hears about a police recruitment exercise that is currently taking place around the present-day Industrial Area Police Station. He and a close friend quickly make their way there. After an initial rejection, one of the European police officers takes notice of him and asks him to retake the test, which he passes and is recruited to the police force on the 2nd day of June in 1945. He was only 17 years old at the time, and as you can imagine, this would have cost him his job. So he claims to be 18, which earns him an extra year before retirement, of course. During this period, he's courting a beautiful girl, Grace Madembo, who they met years before as members of the church choir at his father's church. One of his visits back home from work, he meets her and they seem to enjoy each other's company. He likes her a lot. And to Grace, here's that boy who has become a man. He's now working class, tall, dark, and even more handsome. Even Grace could not resist this, and on the 17th day of December in 1947, the now Constable Francis Judah Muoka marries Grace Madembo in a wonderful traditional wedding ceremony. The following year is 1948. They are blessed with their firstborn, a girl who they name Margaret Mbeke. In 1949, while Margaret is a little baby, he has to leave Kericho, which is his first posting, to travel to Kiganjo for a sergeant's training course. He excels and is immediately retained as an instructor and promoted to the rank of Assistant Inspector African. He has 3 more children, Rosemary Mweni in 1950, Henry Wambua in 1953, and Gideon Kavita in 1956. Immediately after being promoted to inspector in 1957, Francis gets his first exposure to the world. This young man is sent to Metropolitan Police College in Hendon, London for 1 year, after which he is briefly attached to both Southampton and Hull police stations. On his return, he was posted to Bondo Police Station as the OCS in 1958, where he becomes good friends with the then principal of Maseno High School, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, who they regularly shared stories, ideals, and a cup of something baada ya kazi. He also serves as OCS in Sondu in 1959 before heading back to Kiganjo in 1961 for higher training as part of the first 25 African officers to ever receive this level of training. His star is beginning to shine. He is soon after promoted to Assistant Superintendent, then briefly posted to Kisumu as the Deputy OCPD for a short stint, before being transferred to Kilifi as OCPD in 1962. In 1963, just before independence, he is again promoted to Superintendent and transferred to the Coast Provincial Headquarters as the Deputy OCPD, looking after the Urban Division. He was deputy to a long-time friend, the late Michael Arum, with whom they share many memories. 1965 sees Francis posted back to Mombasa as a provincial police officer, Coast Province, making him the first African to hold this post within the province, taking over from Assistant Commissioner Allen. At this time, he is promoted to Assistant Commissioner. His tenure as PPO Coast Province sees him work very closely with our founding father, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. This is a very interesting time for Francis. The head of state is aging and spends a lot of time at the coast, where Francis is PPO. This means that he has to be available whenever Mzee coughs. Mzee would even call Francis and request that he takes Grace to Mama Ngina because she's either upset or lonely. This was also the time that he got to spend time with baby Uhuru. The mid to late 1960s are an exciting time, as this is a transitional time to self-rule, and Kenya is working to set a positive example to other African nations who have either just achieved this status or were still in the struggle. During this period, Francis gets to meet quite a few heads of state or liberators in his line of duty as a top cop at the coast. For example, Milton Obote, Julius Nyerere, Kamuzu Banda, Said Barre, Mobutu Sese Seko, and other leaders such as the Aga Khan and the head of the Orthodox Church at the time, Bishop Macarius, but to mention a few. This is not to mention the national leaders at the time, some of whom became very close friends. For example, Vice President Joseph Murumbi, Vice President Daniel Arap Moi, Attorney General Charles Njonjo, Cabinet Ministers Mbiu Koinange, Njoroge Mungai, just to mention a few. In 1972, he is transferred to Isiolo as PPO for Eastern Province, and it is during this time that he is promoted to Senior Assistant Commissioner of Police. In 1979, he then moved to police headquarters in Nairobi and promoted to Director of Administration, making him the third-ranking police officer in Kenya. Francis retires in 1983 after 38 years in service. He immediately ventures into politics, vying for the Kadhiani Member of Parliament twice in 1983 and 1988, unsuccessful in both occasions. I guess this was just not meant to be. He also served as Commissioner at the Public Service Commission from 1984 to 1988. In 1992, his close friend, the late General Jackson Mulinge, nominated him as councillor, where he went on to be voted as the first mayor of Mavoko Municipal Council, where he served until 1997. He then retired from civil service and completely dedicated his time to parish work within the Catholic Church and family.